Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alison Lagrange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alison Lagrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Fresh Israeli strikes seal off Lebanon's main border crossing with Syria, used by thousands to flee the escalating war. Israel tells residents of over 20 Lebanese towns to evacuate. Iranian Supreme Leader addresses worshippers in Tehran in a rare public sermon, justifies missile attack on Israel, calling it a minimum punishment for Israeli crimes. Billionaire Elon Musk says he will attend Donald Trump's rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, as the Republican presidential candidate returns to the town where he survived an assassination attempt in July. Warning Seoul, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un says his country won't hesitate to use all available offensive forces, including nuclear weapons, if the enemy attempts to encroach on its sovereignty. And Pakistan seals off capital Islamabad with shipping containers to prevent an anti-government rally by supporters of jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan. Hello and welcome. We begin with the latest from South Africa, where political turbulence has become a common occurrence as President Cyril Ramaphosa steers a coalition government. This time he faces fears of impeachment. South Africa's Constitutional Court has agreed to hear a case brought by two opposition parties that revives impeachment proceedings against President Ramaphosa over the Farmgate scandal. The case is being brought by the far-left Economic Freedom Fighters, or the EFF, and the African Transformation Movement. They say the parliament did not fulfill its constitutional role in holding the president to account. So what is the Farmgate scandal? In 2020, around $500,000, possibly more, in US currency notes were stolen from Cyril Ramaphosa's Palapala farm in South Africa's Limpopo province. The cash was stashed down the back of a sofa in his farmhouse. Now, where did this cash come from, and why was it hidden in furniture? Ramaphosa claimed the money came from the sale of animals at the ranch, although he did not explain why it was hidden in furniture. Ramaphosa said that he reported it to the head of his police security detail, but faced accusations of attempting to cover up the theft. The opposition accused Ramaphosa of tax evasion, money laundering, and breaching foreign currency laws. They also questioned the findings of the Reserve Bank and public watchdog that cleared Ramaphosa of wrongdoing. However, an independent report did raise questions over his conduct and recommended a full investigation. It concluded that the president may have broken the law and abused his position. In 2022, Cyril Ramaphosa avoided an impeachment vote. Back then, the African National Congress had a majority in parliament, so it managed to block the motion. However, in the 2024 election, the ANC lost majority in parliament. It is now joined by 9 other parties in a broad coalition. With new partners on its side, will the African National Congress manage to silence criticism of Ramaphosa over the scandal? Or will the unity government allies turn against him? The Farmgate scandal was a major threat to Ramaphosa's leadership when it broke. And now, with the court agreeing to hear the matter, that threat for Ramaphosa has returned and could be even bigger. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, a tragedy has claimed the lives of at least 78 people. A boat carrying nearly 300, including women and children, capsized on Lake Kivu. Such mishaps have become a recurring catastrophe across Africa. But these incidents in Africa often go unnoticed. In contrast, when similar tragedies unfold in richer countries, like the one in Sicily in August, where 7, including a British billionaire, died, the world was fixated with the incident making global headlines. This disparity points to the sobering reality that the world doesn't see all lives as being equal. Our report gets you all the details.
Dharura ilikuwa mingi, ndio basi ikatuangusha tu kumani. Basi kwa neema ya Mungu si tulipona. Na wengine walikuwa mingi, mimi nilikuwa natoka kukilio desha tukaranti ya
78 lives lost. Each one a tragedy as a boat sank in the vast depths of Lake Kivu in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Desperate to survive, some on board threw themselves into the lake as the boat started to capsize little by little. But in no time, it tilted to one side and began to sink, with those on board left powerless to stop it, their cries fading into silence. The victims' bodies lay shrouded in white cloth as their families mourned the loss. Women and children were among those swallowed by the relentless water. Authorities fear the death toll will climb in the coming days as the arduous task of recovering the dead continues. This vessel, crammed with nearly 300 people, had set off from Minova in South Kivu, only to sink mere meters from its intended destination on the Goma shore. On the banks of the lake, grief-stricken families wail for those who will never return.
I was sitting next to the captain in the wheelhouse. There was a light breeze and small waves. It wasn't a big wave because even very small boats could navigate easily. But I was stunned to see the boat muddy, overturn and drown everyone. There were over 300 people on board. I am one of the survivors. We escaped the boat by the grace of God. It was God who saved me. But many women and children drowned along with everything they had with them. The cargo, the money from goods, all of it is gone.
Tragically, this is not an isolated incident. Just 2 days ago, 2 migrant boats sank off Djibouti's coast, claiming at least 45 lives, with 61 still missing. The boats were carrying 310 desperate souls across the unforgiving Red Sea. Search teams continue to scan the waters, clinging to the fading hope of finding someone alive. Then there was the deadly boat accident that unfolded in Nigeria's Niger state, where a boat with nearly 300 passengers sank. At least 60 lives were lost, including women and children. They were returning from a religious festival. Emergency personnel were able to rescue about 160 people, but no one knows why and how the boat sank. Officials say there's no way that one can survive 3 days underwater. In June, another horrific boat accident in the DR Congo took over 80 lives after 2 boats collided on the Kwa River. Investigations were promised, committees were formed, and questions were raised. Yet little has changed. Overloaded vessels, inadequate safety measures, and a lack of life jackets remain the grim norm in Africa's waterways, where tragedy strikes with tragic regularity. For many, boats are the only option, as road travel often means traversing conflict zones and dodging deadly encounters between government forces and insurgents.
The government knows that the road is inoperable. All of this is part of the consequences of the war, yet they keep talking about the war. They no longer make an effort to clear the enemies of the road so that it can become operational again. When this road facilitated traffic, such catastrophes didn't occur. What just happened is due to the war. The government should stop pretending. They should tell us clearly if they have already sold us out to the enemy or take action. Otherwise, they should all step down.
Each year, hundreds perish in these watery graves. Yet the world barely pauses to notice. Contrast this to the response when a luxury yacht, the Bayesian, sank off the coast of Italy 2 months ago. A British billionaire was on board, and the world watched with rapt attention. Special divers and teams were mobilized, and news updates flooded the airwaves. 7 people lost their lives. A tragedy, no doubt, but it dominated headlines globally. Meanwhile, Africa's tragedies unfold in silence, drowned out by indifference. How many more people will die before the world remembers that these lives matter too? Or will they continue to be mere footnotes in a world that only pays attention to the wealthy and powerful?
Moving on to North Africa, where Tunisia is heading to polls on the 6th of October. It will be the country's 3rd presidential election since the Arab Spring protests. With virtually no competition, President Kais Saied is expected to hold on to power, while critics fear his growing authoritarian rule in a country that was once a beacon of hope and democracy in the Arab world. Now, over 9 million voters are eligible to vote in the Tunisian elections, but the voter turnout is expected to be fairly low in the presidential polls, just like the parliamentary and the local elections in the last 2 years. Tunisia's Electoral Commission has approved just 3 candidates in the upcoming polls. Now, these include the 66-year-old incumbent President Kais Saied. Saied is an independent candidate who came to power in 2019 after the death of Tunisia's first democratically elected president, Beji Kadi Essebsi. Now, then there is the 58-year-old left-wing nationalist, Zuhair Maghazou, and he belongs to the party Eshab movement. He is widely regarded as a paper candidate who is supportive of President Saied. Now, lastly, 47-year-old liberal candidate Ayachi Zamal of the Azimun party. Just days before the polls, Zamal was sentenced to 12 years in prison. He received 2 more prison sentences earlier, one for 20 months and another for 6 months. He has been accused of falsifying paperwork relating to his candidacy. He says the charges against him are false and politically motivated. At least 14 presidential hopefuls were barred from joining the race this year. Election organizers ruled that they had failed to provide enough signatures of endorsement, among other technicalities. Not just this, but the Tunisian Electoral Board also barred observers to monitor the vote, alleging that they received suspicious foreign funds. These watchdogs have been monitoring Tunisian elections for fraud since the 2011 Arab Spring uprising that ousted the former dictator Zine El Abidine Ben Ali. Now, the Arab Spring protests started with the Tunisian Revolution, sparked by anger against the country's social, political and economic situation. These protests then spread to the entire Arab world and also saw the ouster of the authoritarian leaders in Egypt, Yemen and Libya. Tunisia's transition to democracy was hailed as successful, but Kais Saied's rule in the last 5 years has brought back fears of Tunisia returning to the pre-revolution era. Saied, a former law professor who had no political or campaigning experience, was elected on a ticket to end corruption and promote equity. He largely gained support from young voters, but many of the Tunisian youth are now protesting against him. They are rejecting his policies that are drifting Tunisia away from democracy.
I don't consider this an election at all. There is no election, just an endorsement, a mere endorsement for a person who holds all the powers and can do whatever he wants in the country and change the laws as he pleases.
In 2021, Sayed abruptly dismissed the Prime Minister, suspended Parliament and bypassed most of the Constitution so that he could rule by decree. In 2022, the country adopted a new constitution in a referendum that was marred by strikingly low turnout. Now, the new constitution has significantly enhanced the president's powers and weakened various checks and balances. Since then, Sayed has been accused of using legal manipulation and other tactics to further restrict individual liberties and silence opponents. Analysts have described him as someone who sees himself as a man on divine mission and does not believe in the role of intermediaries between the people and himself. Tunisia's economy is also not doing well under Sayed. The country remains under huge debt. The GDP grew only 0.4% last year. With Sayed's return almost certain, will Tunisia once again become an inspiration for a positive change, or will it struggle for democracy to continue? Shifting focus to Tanzania, 3 of Tanzania's leading newspapers have been banned from publishing their online editions. Now, this is after they ran an animation seen as critical of President Samia Suluhu Hassan. Online licenses of publishers of Tanzania's most influential English-language paper, The Citizen, as well as the Swahili papers, the Mwananchi and the Mwanaspoti, have been suspended for 30 days. Now, all of the papers are run by the same company. The ban affects all of their websites, social media and YouTube platforms. The suspension comes after The Citizen on social media published an animation featuring President Hassan. The animation highlighted the increase in cases of abductions and disappearances in the country. It showed a character resembling the president switching between TV channels where people were complaining about killings, abductions and disappearances of critics. The president lookalike character seemed upset by all the complaints. Now, Tanzania Communications Regulatory Authority described the clips as presenting negative interpretations for the nation. It said the animation affects and undermines national unity, peace and cohesion. Tanzanian publisher The Citizen has removed the animation and has acknowledged the misinterpretation that it has generated. Rights groups and opposition parties have meanwhile condemned the ban. They call it a move to muzzle the media in the country. This comes as President Hassan is facing increasing domestic and international criticism over allegations that security forces are involved in the kidnapping and murder of opposition figures. Last month, an abducted senior Tanzanian opposition official was found dead in Dar es Salaam. Tanzanian government has also prohibited 2 major rallies by the opposition Chadema party since August. Several leaders of the parties were also briefly detained. President Hassan, who took power in 2021 after the sudden death of her authoritarian predecessor, was initially seen as someone who would remove restrictions on opposition rallies and the media. But her reign has been criticized for renewing repression. Criticism has also come from rights groups and Western governments, including the United States. Many fear that the president is tightening grip on power ahead of local elections in November and a general election next year. And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again on Monday next week at the same time. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend and goodbye.